Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another full card breakdown, this time for UFC Vegas 67. Yes, you heard it right. UFC is back. We got ourselves a nice little weekend ahead. Not only is it the NFL playoffs, but we got UFC Vegas 67. Is it the most electrifying star-studded card? No. Is it a very good betting card? No. Is it a normal DraftKings? No. Just no. But we've been so long without UFC that we're going to take it. And we're going to take it. We're not going to complain. I'm actually hyped up to have something to watch on Saturday night. If we have fights, we're happy. We're living the life. That is my motto here. So we're not going to complain about who steps in the cage as long as some fun fights. And I say we don't waste any more time. Let's get into it. Just kidding. I'm going to waste a little bit more time just to explain really what's going on. Posted a video on Monday, I think it was. We went over my performance last unlock of that challenge, addressed that situation there. That's in the past. What we're doing here is we're breaking down this card from both a betting and a DFS perspective. I'm going to fly through the betting concept of it just because we did have ourselves a plus 77 unit year last year. So to give people a bit of both, we're going to fly through a bit of that. Hopefully everything will be timestamped down below, and I'll give over my quick rundown of the whole DraftKings thoughts at the very end as well. So make sure to look at the timestamps down below, but while I have you here, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button down below. Let's talk some fights. So we sit here finally with UFC events back for the first time in a few weeks, and we get ourselves Sijara Eubanks versus Priscilla Cachoeira. What? 7-7 Sijara Eubanks, 12-4 Zombie Girl Priscilla Cachoeira. An interesting matchup, but definitely with two competitors who aren't really been fighting for the belt recently, it leaves you with an interesting dynamic. From the betting side of things, you cannot trust Sijara Eubanks, in my opinion, at that price tag, let alone being this fight at 125. The girl as a whole is getting older, 500 record, and although she does have some decent wrestling skills, I don't think she can go out there and maintain it over a 15-minute period. What I like more for the betting side of things is the under. I think this is a violent affair. I think it's either Sijara Eubanks taking down some Priscilla Cachoeira, who is really, really bad on the ground and exposing her, or on the feet, Priscilla Cachoeira wearing her down over the stretch, finding a late finish. Both of these fighters' weaknesses play into each other's strength. Cachoeira sucks on the ground, but good cardio. And then you got Sijara Eubanks, who's great on the ground with horrible cardio. I think one way or the other, a finish materialize. Eubanks early, Cachoeira late. And you guys know this falls into one of my favorite plays. First fight of the night, violence. That's what I like to see. I think that's where I'm going to go from this. DraftKings side of things, you have to think that there's some value on Priscilla Cachoeira. I mean, in her 4 UFC wins, her points average out to 100 when she's winning. So I do think if she wins this fight, she does find the optimal lineup at 7.4K. However, you have to think that's going to come by late finish. She's not going to get any takedown control points. You have to hope that she really puts out enough volume to warrant that price tag. She's a bit riskier. On the other side of things, Sijara Eubanks is interesting because not only does her path to victory score well, being control time, takedowns, and maybe an early finish, but I do think she'd have lower ownership. I mean, not too many people are going to have the balls to play Eubanks at 8.8K, and I can see why. So kind of getting a bit different there. I don't mind her for some high upside, but she's definitely one of those fighters that you don't really want to trust or have your money on. So play this fight carefully on DraftKings. Another fun fight, Jimmy Flick versus Charles Johnson. This is one where you have a fight doesn't go to distance at minus 240 once again. You have the unretirement of Jimmy Flick, the submission ace, versus the haircut of Charles Johnson, the guy who absolutely dominated Zhalgas Magulov. Not interesting matchup there. But what you have here is a striker by trade versus a grappler at trade. Jimmy Flick, we all know him. He had that beautiful flying triangles last time out, and it was a very, very interesting dynamic, again, because the guy had all the hype behind him. Everyone loved him, and then he retired. Now he's back. Why? He's back for money. We don't know where his heart is. And in this matchup here, you have to think that he's probably at a disadvantage because Jimmy Flick is not going to win any fights on the feet. He is a grappler by trade. He is a very, very subpar striker. And you're facing a guy in Charles Johnson. Although his stats were skewed by Muhammad Bakayev, he does have a decent takedown defense. He does have a very good get-up game and some decent submission defense as well. So for me, the question is, can Jimmy Flick get down someone in Charles Johnson? Because if he doesn't, he's going to get finished. Jimmy Flick has been finished in all of his losses, and I do think if he cannot get Charles Johnson down to the ground early, he's going to be punished. He's going to be finished. Either way, I see another finish materializing. This is a violent spot, and a spot where I'm also looking at betting violence rather than picking a side. I think it's either Jimmy Flick early or Charles Johnson late, which is why Jimmy Flick's price tag at 7.2K on DraftKings is kind of appealing, just because you have a guy who is so dynamic with such a high floor. The question is, can he get there? And I don't think he always can. Charles Johnson is also interesting because his win condition is probably also a second or third round finish, and at 9K, it could score decently well for you, but do you want to trust a guy whose floor isn't that high? Because if he loses, it's probably early on. I think there are better options up top, but if you want someone with lower ownership in this spot, both Charles Johnson and Jimmy Flick have decent ceilings in my opinion and will probably come at lower ownerships, but I do think there are better options on this card. Now this is where things start to get weird. Daniel Argueta 8-1, Nick Aguirre 7-0. What is going on here? We have a short notice replacement, Nick Aguirre 7-0. All 7 of his wins are coming by first round finish, but the level of competition is atrocious. For a betting side of things, completely pass. Let's focus on DraftKings here. Aguirre is a short notice replacement, meaning Argueta is going to stay at his 8.6K price tag. That price tag is beautiful because he's sitting around minus 600 market wide on the betting lines. You are getting some good value by taking him here. You add in the fact that Aguirre is really, his history of fighting has been all first round finishes. We don't know his cardio. We don't know how he faces against adversity. And this is a huge step up in competition. You have to think there's great value at 8.6K for Daniel Argueta. That being said, probably in a very chalky and for good reason, so do be careful there. Nick Aguirre is a punt play at its finest. You have to think that his win condition is what? A first round finish, just like all his other 7 wins. Is that trustworthy? No. Huge step up, hard to get to, but if you're playing a bunch of lineups and you want that punt play, he's your guy because we haven't really seen him against adversity, but he's never really had to. So this is going to be a really one where I sit back, take the underpriced salary of Daniel Argueta and see how that goes. Next up, Nascimento versus Carlos Hernandez. I can't get to this one from either a betting perspective or a DraftKings perspective. Nascimento should win this fight, but I do think the line's too wide. I think that Nascimento is a very active and good grappler, but he's not the best striker. He's not the best wrestler. And against a guy in Carlos Hernandez, although he should beat him there, I don't think he's going to go out there and necessarily submit him or finish him, and I don't think he's going to dominate him on the feet. So when your win condition is probably controlling a guy and throwing up submissions and really trying to win the ground battle here, which you could do, it's not going to score that well. Nascimento, 9.1K, he's a fade for me because, he dominated Jake Hadley in my opinion. He did very, very well, did exactly what he had to do, and he only scored 83. Carlos Hernandez, never been finished. Although the finish opportunity is definitely there for Nascimento, I don't think I'm going to rely on him at 9.1, especially over the people like Basharat, like Nurmagomedov, like Rebecki. It's really hard for me to get him up top. And Carlos Hernandez, I don't see him sparking Nascimento or out wrestling him, and therefore I cannot get into him either. So a pass fight from both DraftKings and a betting perspective for this one. This next one's a fun one. You have Mendonca at 10-0, Javid Basharat 13-0. Javid Basharat has been on his fast track to the top here. The guy's been absolutely exceptional, and you got another 10-0 prospect in front of him here. I do think Basharat gets this one done again. The man is powerful. The man is exciting. He is super, super well-rounded, and we haven't really seen many flaws from him. Mendonca always coming off a first-round win in Dana White Contender Series. Is getting a huge step up in competition, and I think Basharat flies through him here. I don't think it's to be too easy, but I think every single advantage, and I'm looking on this matchup on paper, Basharat deserves to be the favorite, and he deserves to have this price tag. At 9.2K, I don't mind Basharat in cash. I don't mind Basharat to get a finish in this spot here. To me, it's his world, and he's a guy that UFC wants to promote. He's him and his brother in the UFC. He has the ability to go out there and show some really good performances, and he's done that so far. To me, a step down for Basharat, a step up for Mendonca. Give me Basharat all day, but the money line is too wide, so maybe a parlay piece. And on DraftKings, although he does have a decent ceiling, I think he's going to come in at low ownership, so I will have some Basharat here as well. It's just tricky when the people above him are Nurmagomedov and Rebecki as well. Speaking of Rebecki, let's get to him. 16-1, Nick Fiore 6-0. Man, Rebecki's a fun fighter. Very, very, very powerful. And I feel kind of bad for Nick Fiore because I don't know what to say about him. His 1 wins against Jay Ellis, you can find that tape anywhere, and of course you can beat Jay Ellis. Jay Ellis is like, what, 16 and 122? Man, that guy just takes L's for breakfast. So Mateusz Rebecki's the guy here who I think has the better style in this spot. He has the better submission. He has more strength, in my opinion. I do think he also throws with insane power, and for that reason, he is a great DraftKings option at 9.4K. I think he has insane finish potential. I think he wins this fight at a very high clip. So when you're getting a guy 9.4K, minus 700 to win the fight, and minus 200 to win inside the distance, you have to think he's going to score very well for me. So most expensive fighter on the slate, I think rightfully so. I think he goes out there and beats Fiore pretty decisively. In my opinion, if you're looking at attacking this fight from a betting angle, for books like DraftKings who have the combination of Rebecki and under 1.5, that's how I see this one going down. I think he really impresses, puts his name on the map, and shows Nick Fiore what real level of competition is. Abdulrazak Alhassan is a weird one. The guy has 11 wins, all in coming about a first-round knockout. If the fight gets out of the first round, he loses. I do think he's making improvements here, and this is going to be a step down in competition, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of Claudio Ribeiro. I will tell you that right now. I think Alhassan is with many flaws, but this is a matchup I think he can win. But let's backtrack for a second. This fight's not going the distance. You have 2 fighters who are very, very powerful, who have horrible defensive tendencies and who throw every single thing into their punches. I think Alhassan has the grappling in his back pocket. I think, as funny as that sounds, he's been working on it at elevation, and I do think he has a more well-rounded game plan. With that being said, when I'm looking at both these fighters, although Alhassan is older, I think he has more experience. I think he can capitalize on the advantages that Ribeiro gives him here, because I do think Ribeiro leaves a lot to be desired defensively, and if anyone's going to capitalize on that, it is the power of Alhassan. Ribeiro leaves way too many holes for my liking. I would not be surprised to see a first round finish from either side. However, I have to pick one, gun to my head, it's going to be Alhassan. Don't know if I'll get there to the betting window at Alhassan. DraftKings wise, again, ceiling through the roof. Knockdown upside, first round win it, finish upside. I think he's a sneaky play this week. But the complete opposite of sneaky, Nurmagomedov, 15-0. Man, the guy's what, minus 1,400 against a top 15 or former top 15 guy in Ronnie Barcelos. This is a very disrespectful line. Yeah, sure. Nurmagomedov is going to win this fight. He's the better grappler. He's got better striking, in my opinion. He's on his way to the top. He's who the UFC wants to win. Umar's going to win. But to give the discredit to Ronnie Barcelos, a guy who is a black belt, a guy who went out there dominated his last time out, a guy who has decent wrestling and some decent striking in his own right, I wouldn't be surprised if Ronnie pulled out an upset here. Is he going to? Probably not. And that's why it's extremely hard to not only bet on this fight as a whole from a moneyline perspective, but also take Barcelos at 6.9K on DraftKings, because he will be taken down, he will be controlled, and he probably will be outstruck on the feet as well. So give me Nurmagomedov in DraftKings. Give me his 9.3K salary as a cash play, because he is a minus 1,400 favorite. He is a guy who you're probably getting value on at 9.3K. But from a betting perspective, I wouldn't lay that chalk. You're not getting anything out of it. I don't necessarily think he finishes Barcelos too easily, so how am I going to attack this fight? I'm going to pass on it from a betting perspective. Give me Nurmagomedov on DraftKings. That's about it. This next one, no. Not doing it. Not really going to pick a side here. Vieira, Pennington. Pennington likes to have these clinch battles along the fence, but I do think the more physically imposing fighter is Vieira. I think at range, Vieira wins this as well. Gun to my head, I'm picking Vieira. Don't want a part of it on DraftKings. Don't want to have my money on this fight. And this is really bringing me back to this where I'm talking about discipline. The disciplined better in me is not betting on this fight, even though maybe I would edge Vieira. I just don't want to put my hard-earned money on it. To those who do, best of luck, but the pick is going to be Vieira by decision, but with no confidence whatsoever. This is where things get interesting. Punahele Soriano 9-2, Roman Kopylov 9-2. Soriano's a sleeper pick for me this week. I think he's going to go very under-owned with not only an incredible amount of upside, but even the betting line. A lot of money coming in on Kopylov, and I don't necessarily get it too much. This fight to me is simple. You have the better technical striker in Roman Kopylov versus the more powerful guy in Soriano. He throws everything into his punches. Soriano is trying to take your head off the same way he did to Dolce Lungiabula his last time out. 4 wins, all coming by finish for Soriano in the UFC, that is. And the guy just throws everything into his punches. Sure, he puts himself out of position sometimes, but he also has his wrestling in his back pocket to really bail him out of situations. He hasn't used it very often, but we know it's there. Let's look at Kopylov. The reason people are backing Kopylov, in my opinion, is because he has better volume, technical ability, and is just going to piece up Soriano to a 3-round decision. People also like to really crap on Soriano's cardio. I get that as well. But really, what I don't get is Kopylov's volume isn't that much better than Soriano's. I think if you look at the metrics, it's not like Kopylov is out there averaging 5 significant strikes per minute. He's averaging 3 point something. The guy isn't a world beater. He does have a good 1-2, but he's been hurt by a lot of things. And where he really gets dominated is on the mat. Soriano has a ground game. He's a smart man. I think he has that in his back pocket to not only take down, but mount Kopylov the same way he was mounted by Duraev, the same way his back was taken by Roberson. Kopylov's ground game is messy. It's not very good, and he's going to be completely dominated there by a guy in Soriano. Even on the feet, though, Kopylov is not that good defensively. Neither is Soriano, but who would you rather take a punch from, Soriano or Kopylov? I don't know. To me, this is a spot where we're getting decent value on Soriano. We're getting a guy who has a lot more finishing equity, wrestling equity, minute winning equity, and optics equity here. So for 8.5K on DraftKings, he's a beautiful play, but at minus 150 in the money line as well, I think you give him a much better implied chance than that. Sure, it's not impossible that Kopylov can outstrike him to a decision, but a lot of the times it's going to be Soriano landing the harder strikes, looking for the knockout, having the wrestling in his back pocket, and really winning on a lot of the judges' scorecards. Give me Punahele Soriano in this matchup. That last fight I was very passionate about. This one, I am as a spectator, but you cannot get me to bet this one. 50-50 fight for a reason. Dan Ige, Damon Jackson. Dan Ige is having one of his weakest opponents to date, and although Damon Jackson has proved a lot of people wrong, I do think the better fighter is Dan Ige. The problem is Damon Jackson's style is not good for Ige. Jackson's style is a perfect recipe to beat Ige, and I do think that he can do that. Although I think Ige's taking down defense, I think his striking accuracy is going to win him this fight. Gun to my head. I think Dan Ige is going to win this fight. Sorry, had to reiterate that there. He's the better fighter, fighting a lower level of competition than he usually does. I think he has the ability to finish Jackson like he's been finishing all of his losses. Find the button. I think he does it. The reason I'm not betting it is because Damon Jackson's usual path to victory plays very well to Dan Ige. I mean, Dan Ige was controlled by Korean Zombie for a while. He's controlled a lot of his last bouts. And Damon Jackson has some really good top control and aggressive grappling. But gun to my head, Dan Ige sparks him here. I think it's a decent fight to target on DraftKings because of Ige's ability to catch the chin and find a knockout here versus Damon Jackson's ability to wrestle consistently. But it's not one that I have the most confident read on, so I'm kind of staying away from it. And finally, speaking of not confident reads, Imavov Strickland, I mean, in this matchup, when you have a guy in Strickland who's now the favorite, but he's sitting at 7.7K on DraftKings, you have to look towards him as a decent option. But I don't know where his head at. What was he doing over Christmas break? Why is he here? He's taking this on very short notice, and Imavov's a sniper, man. It's his nickname. He goes out there, he finds the target very well. He was shown to have some decent top control and wrestling in his back pocket as well. For me, this is a completely 50-50 fight, and I do not blame anybody for taking a shot on either side. I think both sides have the reasoning to do it. I just think that on DraftKings, when you have a 50-50 fight and one guy's 7.7K, he's a decent look. He's a decent option, especially 5 rounds. I'm rostering a lot more Strickland than I am Imavov in DraftKings. But that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Quick little recap. Betting-wise, the plays I'm liking the most are the first fight, Eubanks, Cachoeira under. I'm liking Rebecki inside the distance. I'm not minding the under on the Flick Johnson line. I missed that one a bit. I really like Punahele Soriano money line. And although I'm probably not going to play it, for some reason, the psycho in me is tempted on Alhassan as well. DraftKings-wise, don't mind Cachoeira down low. Flick is a punt play. Don't mind Strickland. And don't mind Jackson. Up top, Rebecki's my favorite play in GPP. Umar, of course, a great cash play. And then you look down, Soriano's a sleeper play of mine. So is Razak Alhassan with lower ownership. And speaking of lower ownership, Eubanks is also very, very sneaky for me. But if you want to know more about my DraftKings picks, check out the Pub Sport Radio Show live 7 p.m. on Wednesdays. Or if you miss it, go back and it's always on YouTube there. This is a new style of video for me. Kind of fast forwarded through all these things. I would love to hear all your inputs down below. Could be talking too fast. I was trying to cram a lot of information in there. If you guys would rather me separate a DFS video and a betting video separately, I'm very happy to do that as well. Just trying to give it all to you guys the best I could. But that's going to do it for me here. Please take the time, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, hit me up on Twitter @GamblesGord if you have any questions. And with that, guys, enjoy the fights. Let's make some money, guys.